I'm so thrilled you're joining us today because we're looking at this absolutely fascinating and honestly urgent intersection of two totally different worlds. We're talking about artificial intelligence and music therapy. Yeah, the delicate, deeply human practice of healing through music literally colliding with cutting-edge mathematical algorithms. It sounds a bit like sci-fi, I know, but it's actually happening right now. Now, to understand why this is happening, we have to face a pretty staggering reality. Just 9%. That's the percentage of patients with depression globally who actually receive adequate treatment. Just 9. When you really stop and think about that, it points to this massive, frankly terrifying supply and demand imbalance in mental health care worldwide. There simply aren't enough resources or trained professionals to meet this exploding need. And, well, this severe lack of resources is ultimately driven by funding. Globally, on average, a mere 2% of national health budgets is allocated to mental health. I mean, that's incredibly low. It means critical interventions remain totally inaccessible or unaffordable for millions of people. Okay, let's dive into this. Because when human resources are stretched this thin, technology naturally steps in to try and fill that void. Part 1. Enter AI music therapy. So, music therapy itself is a highly effective clinical tool, but right now, its reach is severely constrained by a critical shortage of licensed, available therapists. To understand how we can scale this highly specialized care, let's just quickly ground ourselves in the traditional practice. It's not just about, throwing on a relaxing playlist. It's a systematic, evidence-based clinical practice. Licensed therapists use musical activities like improvising, singing, or guided listening to really help clients improve their mental health. It's proven to alleviate negative emotions, relieve anxiety and depression, and it's even used in cancer care and rehab training. It's an amazing intervention. All right, now let's demystify the technology that's stepping into this space. There are currently 5 distinct types of musical AIs being tested. First up is general melody generation, which basically creates music from scratch. Then we have emotion-based generation, producing pieces that map to specific feelings. We've got melody harmonization, which builds chords around a simple tune, music genre transfer to swap a song's style, say taking it from jazz to classical, and tone transfer, which literally turns one sound into another instrument entirely. And look, the goal here is absolutely not human replacement. These are designed to be powerful collaborators for therapists. Part 2. The therapeutic workflow. So how do you actually bring code into the clinic? Well, through co-design workshops, experts outlined a highly structured 3-phase workflow rooted in emotion-focused therapy. And this brilliantly illustrates that framework. First, we have information collection, where the therapist learns the client's musical preferences and history. Second is the core phase, emotional problem solving. And finally, consolidating the treatment to maintain emotional well-being. And guess what? AI finds its home right in the middle, during that critical problem-solving phase. Now, that emotional problem-solving phase is deeply iterative. Clients must first arrive at their emotions through awareness and acceptance, and then leave those negative states through coping and transformation. Therapists map specific AI models to these exact steps. For instance, if a client doesn't even know what they're feeling, a therapist might use emotion-based generation to play different emotional tracks until the client goes, "Ah, that's it, that's my mood." It basically acts as an acoustic mirror. Let's make this tangible with a really cool, concrete example from the research. Imagine an anxious client who has zero musical background. In step 1, the therapist simply asks them to hum a melody that expresses how they feel. In step 2, using tone transfer AI, that basic humming is instantly converted into a complex, beautiful saxophone track. No years of jazz camp required. Then in step 3, the client listens back and reflects. By hearing their own raw emotion validated and transformed into art, it dramatically aids their emotional acceptance. How amazing is that? Part 3. Benefits of AI collaboration. So why does this matter? Why should therapists even bother learning these complex new digital tools? Well, integrating AI lightens the incredibly heavy workload of therapists. It increases efficiency by instantly generating transitions or harmonies that a therapist would normally have to compose entirely manually. It enriches the content by providing endless instruments and styles, it enables hyper-customized plans, and ultimately it expands the range of clients who can participate. Instead of worrying about playing the right notes on a guitar, the therapist can focus strictly on the client's emotional shifts. So, the crucial point is that AI fundamentally democratizes music creation. It completely breaks down the barrier to entry. Clients who previously had a fear of making music or felt intimidated because they couldn't play an instrument can now generate customized emotional resonance with just a click or a hum. It makes the therapeutic process accessible to absolutely anyone, regardless of their musical background. It's a real game changer. Part 4. The Human AI Challenges. But of course, it's not all perfectly harmonized just yet. We need a reality check. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive expectation gap here. On one side, we have AI technology, which is fundamentally rigid and sometimes pretty unpredictable. On the other side, we have music therapy, which is highly specialized, intricate, and deeply improvisational. I mean, therapists are constantly reading the room and adjusting on the fly. So bridging this gap between a mathematical output and a highly sensitive, spontaneous human need is a massive hurdle. Just listen to this powerful quote from a veteran therapist evaluating these AI tools. The main challenge is that delicate emotions are hard to capture, especially using the machine. It does not have temperature and no emotion. This captures the core skepticism perfectly. While an algorithm can certainly output the correct notes for a sad song, it completely lacks genuine human empathy. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of mathematical formulas, and many therapists worry it just can't match the subtle resonance of actual human-produced music. Furthermore, there's a real fear of role displacement. During the co-design workshops, therapists expressed concern about becoming sort of software operators. Therapy relies on a continuous, delicate emotional connection. If a therapist has to pause a deeply moving session to type on a keyboard or adjust parameters on a screen, or, heaven forbid, troubleshoot software, that essential human-to-human therapeutic alliance is completely disrupted. And then, there's the danger of uncontrollable performance. Another therapist asked, how can I guarantee at least 99% of the randomly generated music will not negatively impact my clients? In trauma therapy or severe anxiety treatment, a sudden jarring note, an incorrect tone, or even an inappropriate generated lyric, that isn't just an annoyance. It carries serious clinical risks. Safety and predictability are paramount for sure, and generative AI is kind of notorious for its unpredictability. Finally, as we look at deploying these AI tools at scale to solve that massive 9% treatment gap we talked about earlier, we have to impartially consider systemic access. Scaling remote, AI-assisted interventions introduces a very real risk of a digital divide. The people who most desperately need mental health access might be the very same populations who lack digital literacy, reliable internet, or modern smart devices. So while AI can expand access in theory, its implementation has to ensure it doesn't leave vulnerable populations even further behind. Which brings us to the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer: how do we balance the incredible, unprecedented scale of AI with the essential, irreplaceable empathy of human care? The technology to democratize healing is quite literally at our fingertips, but figuring out how to use it safely and compassionately in the therapy room is a challenge we're really only just beginning to solve. So what does the future of hybrid intelligence look like for you? It's a fascinating frontier, and I hope this gave you a solid framework for understanding it. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.